Found myself on a nuclear submarine. I remember the first time that I walked down into the Missile Control Center. And something you may not know is that submarine sailors are required to understand in very great detail every aspect of that weapons platform's operation. It was off-pink, ugly federal government color. There were flashing yellow lights, old-fashioned computers. There was a place with seats, with seat belts, where the missile control technician sat, and in front of them was a computer screen and a row of buttons. Next to it was a little tiny safe. You pull it out and there was what looked like a slot car controller. There was two of them. One was for a drill and one was for real. The last button, and they were big old-fashioned buttons, had a penny on it. And of course, one of the qualification questions was, what is that penny for? Submarine sailors are kind of strange. They have a macabre sense of humor. That penny was to be taken home by the man that pushed the check start enable button and ended the world. And they all believed it. We were all prepared to do it.
Welcome back to Network X. I'm your host, Peter Hart. This is our new time, 8 o'clock every Thursday evening. Tonight we're going to talk about the problems out at Hanford, the cleanup problems, and the money that's supposed to be used for that cleanup that now is being considered for a tritium plant. To help us get a grip on this topic, I have three guests with us tonight. On my left, Jav Parrish. Jav, what organization are you with?
I'm coordinator with Nonviolent Action Community of Cascadia here in Seattle.
Okay, welcome to the show. And Gerald Pollitt. Jerry, who are you with?
I'm with Heart of America Northwest, and we're a citizens group based in the region.
Okay, thanks. And Tom Carpenter.
I'm the director of the Seattle office for the Government Accountability Project, which is a nonprofit organization representing whistleblowers.
Okay, great. Great to have all of you with us tonight. Thanks for coming. Let's start out with you, Jerry. Give us the situation regarding this Hanford budget right now and what's happening with that money, how it's being taken away from cleanup and being used potentially to make new nuclear weapons.
In a nutshell, Hanford was supposed to be out of the bomb-making business as of a few years ago and into the business only of cleaning up after the bombs. And we've got a lot to clean up. It's the most contaminated place in the Western Hemisphere. We're talking about high-level nuclear waste tanks that can explode, stuff seeping into the Columbia River hundreds of times the drinking water standard. And at the same time, the Department of Energy that runs Hanford says, we can't afford to meet our cleanup obligations under our agreement and under federal and state environmental law. They're saying, but we can afford to actually take $31 million a year out of the cleanup budget and spend it on keeping the FFTF, which stands for Fast Flux Test Facility, and I promise we won't say that again.
Okay.
Because we might say it too fast.
Right.
And it really describes what it's all about when you say it fast. And they want to take $31 million out of cleanup and spend it on keeping it on standby to make tritium for bombs. Tritium is the H in the H bomb.
Okay, and it's extremely powerful H in the H bomb? Is that the idea here?
It's what makes the H bomb really go big boom.
Okay, so this is the new and improved big boom.
Yes.
Tritium. Tom, tell us about your whistleblowing organization. What have you been up to in this situation in Hanford?
Well, for years we've been representing workers at the Hanford site who have been informing the public about scandals, wrongdoing, threats to public health and safety from the Hanford site. And we saw the end of the bomb-making mission in about 1990, and since that time have been helping to monitor the cleanup out there. And when this proposal came about last year to restart this reactor and turn Hanford back into a bomb facility, the public interest community was somewhat taken aback, to say the least. This was, to us, a bolt out of the blue. This was a reactor scheduled for decommissioning. They're going to take it apart. They had done an environmental impact statement on that, and everyone agreed that this is what should happen to this reactor. At the last second, the Secretary of Energy, responding to a very intense congressional lobbying campaign, decided to halt the decommissioning of that reactor and put it on hot standby so that the Energy Department could maybe use this for a dual mission. At that point in time, they were talking about making medical isotopes from this reactor as well as the tritium. And the company that was proposing to use the medical isotopes was a very small organization out of Ellensburg called ANMS, or Advanced Nuclear and Medical Systems. And this is where we got involved because one of their employees could not stomach the plans of ANMS to import foreign nuclear fuel to be the fuel to run this new reactor, or this old reactor they're going to take apart with a new mission. And when he informed the public that this was what was in the works and that this fuel was not for cancer causing, to cure cancer, to make isotopes for medical purposes, but instead was for bomb making, he was thrown in jail. Literally, he was arrested within a week and charged with stealing and possessing stolen documents from the company that he used to prove his allegations. So we became very interested in the plans of the government to not only reopen this reactor, but what are they doing throwing employees in jail who are talking about their plans.
So what are they trying to cover up here? They're hiding things,
exactly.
It sounds like.
Exactly. And so we decided to find out, and we filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the U.S. government and obtained a series of documents. I brought some with me, showing that, in fact, what they were trying to cover up were serious safety problems with the reactor that had never been discussed before. And there's been a raging debate about opening the FFTF reactor at Hanford, mostly on economic and bomb-making proliferation grounds. It was somewhat of a surprise to find that the Energy Department itself considered that the reopening of this reactor was a big safety risk.
So last night we had a public hearing at the Seattle Center, and the opening of our show we had Jim True, a local citizen, who came to give testimony to the Department of Energy, telling them why he felt it was a really lame idea. Why don't you tell us about what happened last night there, and about the environmental impact statements that we haven't been seeing, the public disclosure we haven't been seeing. How long have they been hiding here?
Well, since about the end of World War II, actually. Last night was annual public budget hearing. This was for fiscal year 1999. The reason it became a focus of testimony and of protests for a wide variety of groups, including Heart of America Northwest, including Nonviolent Action Community of Cascadia, which is the group that I help coordinate, is that it has become the only place in which the DOE is taking public testimony about the restart of the Fast Flux test facility. They have canceled their environmental impact statements, and they have canceled also a public hearing process until after a decision is made as to whether to go ahead with the actual bomb-making mission late next year. Right now, Hanford is on a short list, and the diversion of money that Jerry mentioned, the $31 million a year, is to keep the reactor ready. That's the money that's being diverted right now from the cleanup. NAC, the group that I work with, is essentially a group that works on peace and social justice issues, talking about budget priorities, talking about money that is still going to the military when presumably the Cold War is over, and we should be having and we should be seeing a redirection of federal expenditures toward the sort of social needs that aren't getting funded, as we all know. So it didn't particularly come as a surprise to us that Hanford was looked at for both the Fast Flux facility and also a plutonium waste storage proposal that's out there right now, because we haven't seen the kind of cutbacks in military spendings or the kind of cutback in Cold War-oriented weapons production and military missions that you would expect. What this comes down to is something that anti-military activists have known for a long time, which is that military expenditures in this country primarily are not about defense of the country. They're about corporate welfare. They're about enriching defense contractors. It's a scam. There's an enormous amount of money to be made for private contractors at something like Hanford. This is why ANMS, for example, has a great deal to gain through the privatization of a facility like FFTF. Why the hoax of the medical isotope statements being put forward both by private industry and by elected officials as a justification for FFTF, which is exclusively a military facility. So we had a couple hundred people come out last night to Seattle Center to offer testimony, virtually unanimously, with the exception of the DOE and other government officials who were present there to testify against the restart of Hanford. And this came despite the fact that there has been virtually no publicity in the media thus far, certainly in the mainstream media, about this proposal. And a lot of the publicity that has been out there has been around things like it will cure cancer, it will create an enormous amount of jobs, things that have been at best misleading. So our mission from the different political perspectives that we're coming from was to try and shine a light on this proposal, let the public know what exactly it involves. And once the public find out what's at stake, what's at risk environmentally with the safety issues, the kind of secrecy and cover-up that has followed the development of this proposal, the cost, what we should be doing instead with the money, we feel there will be a lot of public opposition to this.
A tremendous, impassioned and very sincere outpouring last night. It was really impressive. And these are people that obviously found out about through your organizations, but the mass of the public still don't know what's going on. There's a real disinformation campaign going on here. Jerry, I was going to ask you about the money that these contractors are making and all the cost overruns and all of that. You spelled that out pretty clearly last night. Could you do that again for our viewers?
Well, I like to point out that the only cleanup going on out at Hanford is that the contractors are cleaning up handsomely.
Yeah.
The waste is still there, but Hanford's budget for cleanup is about $1 billion this year. And we've discovered that going through their budget, forcing them to disclose piece by piece, it turns out the contractors that run Hanford, led by Floor Daniel, are actually taking $1 out of every $2 for their corporate overheads. $506 million in corporate overheads. Then it turns out that they overran their overhead budget this year, and so they're cutting work like finding out what's in the high-level nuclear waste tanks so that they can be paid their corporate overheads on which they overran their budget by $31 million. Now, in terms of one recent thing that happened today as a result of the hearing, whether or not the public will find out again about the next hearing, the business interests from the Tri-Cities, led by the Tri-Cities Industrial Development Corporation and other powerful players there, have written letters to the governor and the Department of Ecology attempting to pull Heart of America Northwest's public participation grant funding, which was used to let people know about the hearing, because obviously the Department of Energy didn't want people to know about it. And today, all the business groups who are backing restart of the bomb factory
with our tax dollars.
With our tax dollars. Yeah, you know, it's kind of
socializing the costs of their private profits.
It is Homer Simpson. You chose a good name for this show tonight.
I couldn't help but see that last night when I was watching those panelists from the Department of Energy. I kept looking up there and seeing Homer responding to all these questions.
I mean, Homer Simpson, I don't even think Homer Simpson would take a rock and throw it in a high-level nuclear waste tank, much less pull it back out and put it in his pocket. That's what a worker at Hanford actually did a couple years ago.
What's most disheartening to me is that it's not just the Hanford contractor community behind this reactor idea, but our own, both of Washington state senators have been behind the scenes lobbying for really what turns out to be Cold War pork barrel in the form of a very highly dangerous, unstable reactor, a reactor whose operation is not needed, whose operation will contribute to proliferation problems in the world. We're trying to get rid of nuclear weapons That's what I hear. Clinton is making deals with, overseas to, bring the level of nuclear warheads down, and yet Hanford is vying to make more tritium. Why are we doing this? Why is Patty Murray, of all people, supporting a Cold War mission like this? Why is Governor Locke supporting this mission? And I think Jav hit the nail on the head. This is Cold War pork barrel, and it's at great public expense, and it's unconscionable.
And we should point out also that Oregon's governor and Oregon's entire congressional delegation is opposing this proposal. They are not getting the financial benefit from it, but they do live downriver.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Anybody in Washington politically that is opposed to this?
Adam Smith and Jim McDermott.
Okay.
Adam Smith has said, I oppose taking cleanup bucks and spending it on a bomb factory. And Jim McDermott has said, I'm against the bomb factory restarting at Hanford and especially using your cleanup dollars. Mike Lowry wrote a letter against it, but he's no longer governor.
Right.
And Gary Locke apparently believes that tritium is good for medical work or something. He's writing constituents letters saying it's a medical machine and not a bomb factory.
So he's bought this line that it's good for business. Huh?
Yeah. The Department of Energy has already stated explicitly that the mission of Fast Flux will be exclusively military. They are not at this time or at any time in the future even considering a medical mission, for instance, the isotopes. And there have been another number of other sources that indicate that such a project just is not financially feasible now and in the future, even if it were medically feasible or justifiable. So it really seems like a red herring.
So our viewers, if you would like to write a letter to Gary Locke or Patty Murray to tell them what's really going on out there, it's obvious that they need help on this issue. So we'll get that information up on the screen, contact information to those elected officials. What was I going to ask you?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Well, Jav, I think you should tell the viewers a little bit about the nuclear family that showed up last night.
Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't have enough footage of that. Otherwise, we would have played that.
Well, we did a little street theater last night also, which was meant to give for the DOE officials who were there and the people who were there a little bit more of a visual impact to what was going on, and also to make it a little bit less of a dry budget hearing. We're asking concerned citizens to sit through interminable budget presentations by bureaucrats who are doing their best to use the English language or their version of the English language to obscure what's actually in the budget. And we should talk about that a little bit too, because the budget proposals they were making, because they're claiming that they don't have enough funding, the same reason they claim they couldn't do the environmental impact statement or a proper public hearing process, they're also claiming that they don't have the money to meet what they are already obligated to do legally towards Hanford cleanup. Yet at the same time they're going ahead and funding these enormous corporate cost overruns. So we had a number of people who took advantage of a very generous offer by a sort of a punk rock beauty supply place down in Belltown that opened their doors for the afternoon and had people come down and have their makeup applied by various theatrical makeup people, and we brought the nuclear family, complete with the puppy dog and the 2.3 children. Mm-hmm. We had a number of people made up. We had about 25 or 30 different people in radiation suits or lab coats with a couple 3 full-faced respirators. Mm-hmm. We had a civil defense siren in the building that went off at appropriate times when the DOE officials were making what we felt to be inappropriate or clearly ludicrous comments concerning the hazards at Hanford, and people. Radiation illness being what it was, people die, but then as they do in mutant 50s grade B movies, they come back to life. So people died and thrashed around for a few seconds and then got back up and sat politely in their chairs. So basically what we were trying to do, aside from just sort of physically demonstrating what was going on, was to serve notice to the DOE in the many different ways that we did, both through the showing scientific evidence, showing evidence regarding the impact on disarmament issues and so forth, but also just in terms of the number of people and the broad variety of people that showed up, that this is going to be a political issue. This is going to be something where if they want to go ahead and try and restart this nuclear facility without involving the public in the process, without telling the people about the risks, without telling people where their tax dollars are going, we're going to make it into a political issue.
It was a great cross-section of people. That was another thing that was really apparent there. You know, you really had all walks of life showing up, and people that were experts to people that just, they obviously realize this is a bad thing, and they're concerned, and they're finding out through the grapevine, not through our media, by the way. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that, and maybe you can comment on the coverage that you saw or you didn't see today. This whole thing seems to be adversarial. I mean, and yet they should be our advocates, shouldn't they? The Department of Energy, don't they work for us? Shouldn't they be?
I'm not sure they've ever worked for us.
Okay.
I mean, they've poisoned us.
Yeah.
Let's face it, they've worked against us, and as many people eloquently said last night, for 50 years they've contaminated us and hid the truth from us and made decisions and then announced them and then said, we'll ask for your comment if they asked at all. And they're back in that mode. We saw that.
Well, even, I think it's really indicative of the kind of people we're dealing with when they take a man who goes public with information about importing spent nuclear fuel from foreign countries to fuel this reactor, and a week later he is in jail because the documents that he used to prove his point were from a company they allege those documents were stolen. And in fact, these documents were given to the Department of Energy, many of them, and were available under the Freedom of Information Act. That man, whose name is Randall Bonebrake, is facing trial on April 15th of this month in Ellensburg. It's amazing to me that a county prosecutor would actually go to the steps of prosecuting him on behalf of a company alleging that he has these documents with this inflated value supposedly for these documents.
So here he is standing up for...
He's facing 11 years in jail and $500,000 in fines for telling the truth to the public. And again, I think, what are they up to? Why are they going after this guy like this? And I think it's because he exposed a boondoggle and got people very upset about what was going on.
Who could we contact about that? Are there
That's a good question.
names or numbers or agencies that we could...
I mean, I think that's one for Gary Locke too.
Okay.
This is a county judicial system being used by a private company to go after a whistleblower. And after 20 years of representing whistleblowers, thousands of them in all walks of government and life across the country, we have never seen a whistleblower prosecuted in this manner.
Well,
And anytime you have a case like this, a decision to prosecute is a political decision. And the way to influence it is political also. We have not seen, both on the whistleblower case, on a number of the other aspects of Hanford, our local media giving adequate coverage to what's going on out here. I think the best way to put pressure on the prosecution and the trial in Ellensburg is to put pressure on the Seattle media to cover the story, to raise a stink so that a lot of people are outraged.
Plain old letter to the editor saying, don't prosecute someone who let us know what was happening at the FFTF reactor would go a long way. And then if you know someone or if you have a contact with someone in Ellensburg, letter to the local editor.
that would be great.
And if I might plug our homepage on the internet, we're at www.whistleblower.org/GAP, or GAP for Government Accountability Project. And our whistleblower of the month is Randall Bonebrake. So if you want to learn more details about who he is, you can go there.
Say that one more time, www.
It's www.whistleblower, which is what we do, .org/GAP, GAP.
It's a hot homepage, no pun intended.
How about the local media? And we had the story in the PI this morning. Give it a grade, and then talk about the TV coverage, everything. What do you see happening since last night?
Good coverage in the PI. Several years ago, we had a lot more coverage of Hanford in the local papers here, and Tom and my organization started digging into what the PR machine out at Hanford that has about $7 million a year to spend.
Of our
is
money.
doing.
Of our
PR.
money.
Yeah, PR money. Yep.
Wow.
And it turned out that every time a bad story, in their eyes, was written, they went after the reporter, they wrote to the editor, they bashed the sources, and they called the reporters' names, and pretty soon the media basically said, hey, let's go hands off of Hanford. The PI has been doing some very good coverage recently, getting back into it. We hope the Times will be following suit more again. But you really see a massive machine bearing down on any media that talks about this story.
You can tell some big lies with that money. That's
And
incredible.
once again, it's our money
Yeah.
that's being used to lie to us.
Good.
There are several reporters out there who maintain that they were terminated from their jobs after writing too negatively and for too long about the Hanford site.
Interesting. The television, local television coverage. I mean, Channel 7 was there last night. They had a cameraman there. Did they do anything? I think they had something on at the 10 o'clock news, or
Not that I've heard of.
Okay.
Yeah, they did.
Did they?
Yeah, they covered the die-in, and I heard that it was quite visual. And
so they
Well, that's nice.
they covered the nuclear family. The new nuclear family. Is that what you're saying? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the people who died during the hearing
Dying,
and
right.
lunged out of their chairs.
But
And,
that was it. There was
Right.
they missed the testimony. They missed everything.
right,
else.
they didn't do any substance. Yeah,
Oh, great. That's good.
but at least if there wasn't some theater there, they wouldn't have been there.
That's true. Good job, Jeff. Well done.
we called their tip lines. It was the only reason that even one of them came out.
Let that be a lesson to us in how we want to get the media involved. We have to give them a circus, or they won't show. All right, I just got the 2-minute warning. Give us final plugs or final marching orders or whatever.
Sure. As you mentioned, write Governor Lowry, write Patty Murray, put pressure on them. Also Federico Pena, who is the Secretary of the Department of Energy. Our group, Nonviolent Action Community of Cascadia, is hoping to organize a long-term campaign to put public pressure, grassroots pressure, to stop the fast flux reactor from happening. Our phone number is 547-0952, and we'll be happy to provide information on the issue, answer any questions, and put people to work.
Okay.
One thing that people can do every month to stay in touch with the issue is call 1-800-24-CLEAN, C-L-E-A-N. Every month we post what's happening at Hanford on a recorded message if there are hearings or anything.
1-800-24-CLEAN.
Right.
Oh, that's good. All right.
And the only thing I would say is, remember, don't let Hanford become a bomb factory one more time. Don't let our taxpayer money be diverted for this purpose. It's a safety nightmare, and it's an environmental nightmare, and it's a proliferation mistake. So people should remember that when they're writing to Governor Locke and Patty Murray.
And it's expensive. It's
Thank you.
very expensive.
Thank you both, all three of you. I'm
Thanks for
sorry for
doing this show
joining us.
tonight.
And
Sure.
thank you, viewers, for coming, and we'll see you next week. Stay tuned.